Hey there, all you creepers and reapers. Welcome to another episode of the Femme Fatalities. I'm your co-hostess, Anna, and I'm here with...
Hello, Grieflings and Frightlings. It's Margaret, and boy, do we have a wonderful cast to talk to you today about. Anna, what movie are we discussing today?
Well, today we're going to take a little trip back down the world of Stephen King. Yes, I know that everyone listening realizes how much we love him at this point. And we decided to watch Gerald's Game, which is great because the film was new to both of us, essentially. We didn't have a huge background. A lot of the other ones, there are multiple movies and things like that. However, this was a really great watch, I must say. I highly, highly, highly recommend this film. There are a lot of triggers, just to name a few, and Margaret, jump in if I miss any. Childhood trauma, childhood sexual abuse, necrophilia, BDSM themes, sudden death, unexpected and unanticipated death, animal violence. Am I missing any?
I would add non-consensual, or we could say attempted spousal rape,
Mm-hmm.
because of the scene. She doesn't want to consent, and they even have that conversation where she is coerced into living out his fantasy and she didn't want to, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's rape if you're forced or coerced into doing something you don't want to do. So I would say spousal rape.
Yeah. And also just rape fantasy or, um sexual, I don't want to say sexual deviance because hey, like if you're into BDSM and so is your partner and you both consent, like go for it, do what you want. Um this is a situation, as Margaret said, where one partner has a specific fantasy, the other one is not into it, they're not consenting. So if any of those things trigger you or they're not quite your cup of tea, please move on to the next cast. But if you'd like to hang around and hear more, go ahead and grab a cup of bruja brew and some coffin cookies and settle in for a spell.
Yes, all right. Gerald's Game. What a oh, this was a this was an intense watch. I am a Mike Flanagan fan. I love his movies, his shows. I love how I feel like for me, he's up there with Ari Aster in the way that he really conveys human emotion. Also, the Greek director, Anna hasn't seen this film. I just watched it, Killing of the Sacred Deer, where these directors can really just embody human emotion from just such a raw place. But so I really appreciate that about him, because this movie, yeah, it's an intense watch. It's an uncomfortable watch in a lot of different parts.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that for me, I've always been a fan of Carla Gugino as an actress, even back in the day when she was in the movie Son in Law. Yeah, I think that she has a really great range. A lot of people think about like Spy Kids when they think about her, but she's been in so many different films and series. And I think she's tremendously talented. And this role was just dynamic. I loved how she was able to portray a wife who I would say was embarking onto a journey of walk away wife syndrome very soon, but also someone who was very competent and strong. Um, so that dynamic was very fun for me to watch. I think that the way that her internal dialogue was portrayed so that the viewer could actually watch what was going on was absolute genius.
Yes, I agree. The When she's in those hallucinations and herself and her dead husband are having these interactions, it's just beautifully done, and you get this insight into her even as she's having these flashbacks. And even as we started talking about like the beginning, right? Where she's trying to save her marriage. And so she agrees to be handcuffed to the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And quickly her husband starts to violate her wishes.
Mm-hmm.
I think he even ignores like her safe word. Like she's like, no, stop. I don't want to do this. And he's like, no, like, let me do
Yeah.
this. And she's really disturbed
Yeah.
by
And
this. She doesn't want to.
yeah, and he's like, "Oh, I thought you were just playing along." Oh, and it is. And the other thing too, for me when I was watching this, he's using like real cuffs. Like he's not using
Mhm.
safety ones or anything like that. And so I'm just like, "Oh, okay, this dude is like hardcore because there's no concern for her well-being at that point." And it's really unfortunate because there she is. She's wearing this beautiful nightgown she got. She looks so pretty and sweet. And then he's like, just, and once again, like if you're into it, like that's cool as long as your partner consents. Who cares? It's fine. We're talking about the dynamic of the couple in
Yeah.
this film, and she clearly was not into it.
No. So yeah, I will second that. If you're into that, great. And you have your safety word and there's consent, awesome. Do that. And this movie definitely. And it's that I think as especially as women, and Anna, correct me if you disagree, when we watch that, like the pit in our stomach, especially when he's like scream and she's kind of because she's so uncomfortable. And then he's
Mm-hmm.
like, no, scream.
Yeah.
Nobody will hear you. And then you get her screaming where she really
Mm-hmm.
is afraid that, like, please, maybe a neighbor will hear me. Maybe something will stop this. And he's just that fear if
Yeah.
for a woman when another person is getting enjoyment out of your fear, and you
Mm-hmm.
can see that in him. So again, wonderfully acted, because then it's like he's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, oh, you are afraid, now I'm even more turned on. And then for her, that fear of like, the more scared I am, the more turned on you are. This is not a good situation because she's
Right.
handcuffed to the
Mm-hmm.
bed.
Yeah. And then, of course, the bad situation gets worse because good old Gerald took too much Viagra and had a bum ticker. So, if you haven't
Yeah.
seen it, pause now. But if you have seen it, he drops dead.
Yeah. I will say, like, the write up, I did not appreciate. One reason I hadn't watched Gerald's Game
Mm-hmm.
was because the write up was like, a woman kills her husband and then has to face her demons. I'm like, she didn't kill her
She didn't kill
husband.
him. It's not like
He
she
died
punched him
of a
to
heart
death. Like
attack.
you know what I mean? Like he has a heart attack from his bad heart and the combination of the Viagra. Like, which is not something that has ever happened. I mean, that there have been many news reports of that happening. Um, and I think that's actually on the side effects list. Anybody out there who takes it, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's one of the side effects that you have to be aware of. Just like for women, if we're taking birth control, there are certain, estrogen and progesterone levels that make you more susceptible to having a stroke. So, each medication has its own benefits and also side effects that you have to be aware of. Um, I I did when the dog came in and started eating him. I Is it bad that I was just like, oh, huh, okay? Because I was like, man, that dog's really smart because it had to open a door.
No, the door was left open.
Oh, that's right. That's
Because I
right. Right.
remember, right? She looks back and I was like, okay, they're making a point to let us know. And I appreciate that. I think that's consistent in Mike Flanagan's work. It might just be this
Mm-hmm.
movie of like saying, look, pay attention here. Like, this
Mm-hmm.
is because I don't know about you, but like when you're watching a movie and you're like, how'd the dog get in? All
Yeah.
the
Like,
doors were closed.
yeah.
And these little things that allow our
Mm-hmm.
brain to then be that much more into the
Yeah.
scene because our brain's like, ooh, open door.
Yeah.
That there's a reason why there's an open
Right.
door.
Okay, that makes way more sense. I did not catch that part, so I'll have to, when I watch it again, which I'm sure I will, I'll have to pay closer attention. But I do think, like, with the dog, like, realistically speaking, the dog was, it looked like a Malinois or, you know, some sort of shepherd. Let's say the dog was 100 pounds. After eating the beef and eating part of Gerald, it would have been full for a while. Like, I don't know that it still would have hung around as long as it did. Because it wasn't like a domesticated animal. It was a wild dog that we assume lived in the woods. Like, it probably wasn't anyone's pet that had gotten loose. So I don't know. I just feel like a lot of the time with pack animals, they eat and run. They don't stay with the kill. So I don't know. I just thought that was weird, but I mean, it's part of what made the movie. So I guess it was necessary.
I wondered if for me, I thought it was like resource guarding. It
Mm-hmm.
has this meal, and there's most likely no other animals are gonna come and try to get it. So he had a warm, safe place to stay
Yeah.
for a while. Maybe he was waiting for her to die. So he was like, yeah, I'm good. I
Yeah.
got some food for a while.
Right. Ugh. Oh my gosh. Well, and of course, like one of my favorite scenes, which I know is skipping ahead quite a bit, is when she figures out how to get herself out of the cuffs.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, yeah, that's pretty accurate. However, you know, physiologically, it would be a little bit different in terms of how our musculoskeletal system is, but resilience, man. And it just goes to show, like, and we'll get back to the rest of the movie in a minute, but hey, if you're out there listening, no matter what you have been through, like, if you're still around, even though you've, you know, like our heroine, you've gone days without sleep, you can't focus on anything, you feel like you're hallucinating and losing your mind, like, you still have that inner strength. And, you know, don't ever forget that.
Yes. And you bring up that point, which to catch you up as we're kind of jumping all over here, she's hallucinating of herself and her husband, and they're talking to her, and he's kind of not really helping her. Her hallucination of herself is, and so when her hallucinatory self is like, remember what happened with the glass or whatever she
Mm-hmm.
said, and we go back and I talk about this part because this part really stuck with me. So, right, her and mom don't get along. They fight a lot. Mom gets on dad. Oh, she's your precious little daughter. So we know we have like some jealousy between mom and the daughter. And then dad molests her while mom and everybody else goes out on the lake. And so now they're at dinner, right? And
Yeah.
mom's sitting there and she's there and she breaks the glass. And
Mm-hmm.
her dad goes, I got it. And
Yeah.
he's whisking her away. And that moment
Mm-hmm.
where she looks back at her mom with that, like, please help me.
Yeah.
And that look where before mom was jealous of her. And then mom has that look almost like, oh shit, like what's
Mm-hmm.
happening? What
Yeah.
happened? I would have loved, I don't know if the book goes into this, listeners, if
Mm-hmm.
you've read it, if mom actually showed up or mom was
Yeah.
able, because as we know with trauma, that's part
Mm-hmm.
of trauma. When somebody's been abused by a parent, there is often, not all the time, a complacent parent, a parent
Yeah.
that says that parent would never do that, that didn't happen, you're lying. So I always wonder if the mom was able to repair that with her or showed up and maybe they got divorced. I don't know, because that moment stuck with me, that look between them. And I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I really hope mom was like, what? That's not an okay look.
Yeah. Well, and we find out too that she her character Jessie is her name, right? Yeah, Jessie.
Mhm.
Um, when she's hallucinating, kind of her stronger self says, you know, you didn't have a choice. You had to make sure your little sister was okay. So we know that, you know, she's protecting her little sister. Obviously, she had to grow up way too soon, which happens very frequently in filial abuse type situations. The other thing, too, is if we look at her age and we look at what happened in that time, the father was an attorney, right? We don't know if the mother worked. So those dynamics come into play as well. How often do we hear stories of, someone who's a baby boom generation or even a Gen Xer that, this was going on in the household, but one parent didn't leave the other because they were completely reliant on them. And that's something, if you went through that and you're listening right now and you identify with that statement, please talk to someone. You are not alone. Other people have gone through that. There are amazing, amazing counselors out there who can help you navigate any sort of emotional, psychological, physiological, spiritual issues that you still experience because of your past and the incidents involved in it. So please, please, please know that one of the most empowering things that you can do for yourself is to seek help and for someone to bear witness.
Yes, definitely, because it is not your fault. And like you said, how her stronger self was like, you had to protect your sister, which would allude to that it happened more than once. Even though, like, how dad makes it sound like, oh, I'm so sorry this happened. And the insidiousness, like, when we think about trauma, there is trauma that we occur because maybe our parents are physically abusive or verbally, and they don't know anything better. It's not that they want to intentionally hurt us. Then there is insidious trauma where the person wants to hurt us. They are getting pleasure. So her husband and then her dad, I'm going to say it was insidious the way he made her think that it was her fault and that let's not tell mom because of all of this. I was grossed out when that happened. And
I mean, he clearly is a sadist, and I think a lot of this we can see in her father's behavior and the sadism that comes out of him turns her into a complete masochist. Like, she believes she needs to be punished. She believes she does not deserve anything beyond that. And I think that is a huge part of how she ends up marrying Gerald in the first place, right? And they even talk about it in the movie. He's older. He's an attorney. He tells her what to do. He has this power and control over her, just like her father did. And, the statement, history repeats itself, right? So history will repeat itself if we don't figure out how to heal and break those bonds that are unhealthy.
Yes, exactly. And that you're not at fault. When I work with people, I tell them, like, we will stay in situations that we're comfortable in, even if they're not good for us, because that's where we know how to thrive. If I'm raised by alcoholics, I will be in relationship with alcoholics because I can predict that. I can thrive in that. I know that in a way it's a safety net if I'm on the high wire. So we have to look at, and listeners, how do you remove the high wire? Or not the high wire, but the net to say, my net is full of pieces of broken glass. It hurts me every time I fall on it. How do I go ahead and be uncomfortable? And that's a great thing about this movie. We see her start to get uncomfortable. We see her really start to take back her power to say, no, this wasn't okay. And I have to share my story and I have to speak my truth. And she then goes on to help people, other victims of sexual assault.
Yeah, which is amazing. I mean, we talk so much about death and grief, but trauma is a huge, huge, huge topic. And that can set many of us on grief journeys because, I mean, look at the case of Jessie. She's grieving for her childhood that she lost. She's grieving for the parent she thought she knew. She's grieving for her adult life as well because it's been so severely impacted. And she is able to navigate the journey in a very, very frightening setting and come out where she's trying to make meaning out of what happened and help others.
Yes, it's those life losses. Grief is not all about death losses. And like Anna said, she's grieving so much. All the parts of her that died when her dad molested her for the first time, when he convinced her that they couldn't tell mom, when mom didn't go to the bathroom to help her clean up her hand, and that fear that she had, because now she's with daddy. The grief of going from she's daddy's little girl and they have this special relationship to now she's daddy's little girl and they have a special relationship because of sexual abuse. There's grief there. And so we see Jess is this bereaved woman from all these life losses, and she's just get the husband that's going to tell her what to do, because that's where she's comfortable and that's where she's numb.
Completely. And I feel like we were talking about this earlier. Stephen King, filial abuse is a very strong theme in many of his works. I mean, even watching Gerald's Game, there were several things that I saw that reminded me of Dolores Claiborne. The molestation out near the water, because it happens on the boat in Dolores Claiborne. Glass cutting her, because in Dolores Claiborne, she busts the Christmas ornament with her hand and scratches her neck, and then she has the scar as an adult. So these themes are very prevalent in his films. I mean, just to name a few, we have an abusive father with a daughter, you know, and it's just, it makes me question, like, you know, why does this keep coming up? And Margaret had a really great thought. You had said something about maybe this is him projecting his fears into his work.
That's what I wondered, as I had shared with Anna. I recently watched Soft and Quiet, a really messed up movie, and the writer-director wrote and directed it because this was one of her biggest fears in life. And that's when I shared with Anna, I wonder if this is one of his biggest fears, being a father, and that fear of what would happen if he became sexually attracted. How would he mess up his child? And how do we talk about these things, right? Because I also wonder, right, if he brings awareness, maybe there's some man or maybe a mother reading this book and says, oh my gosh, this person's sexually attracted to their child. I really think I need to get therapy. I really need to talk to somebody, because this is not okay. And where is their intervention to prevent a child from being abused by their parent? That awareness. So I'm like, I don't want to see it. Just because we don't want to see it does not mean it's not existing in the world. And how do those people that are attracted to their child get support? Or maybe it's because they were molested and then they're continuing
repeating
family trauma. Well, let's break these cycles, and one way is through movies and books that address these issues.
Yeah. And, you know, the other thing I wonder too is maybe one of his other fears is someone abusing one of his children, right? And then him not knowing, because, like, if we look at the other parent, Dolores Claiborne, I mean, she figures it out and she takes care of it, I guess we could say. At least she removes the immediate problem.
Very silent generation. That's the generation, that's the boomers' parents, right? It feels like, I mean, my mom had shared when she was a kid, like, she was sadly molested, and basically her mom was like, okay, we'll take care of it. And she just knows that then that man, she never saw that man again. That very silent generation of, we'll take care of this. We're not going to get you therapy. We're not going to discuss about it. We're not going to do stuff for the person that's been perpetrated on, but we'll go ahead and remove the perpetrator, because that's what they could do at the time.
Yeah. It's like, when you get a splinter, right? If you just take the wood out, okay, well, it's gone, but then you still have the open wound that you need to clean and make sure that heals. And you're right. I think, you know, the viewpoint of therapy was so different then too, and it wasn't as readily available. And each generation kind of has its own norms and mores when it comes to counseling and supports and services. But it's never too late. Like, if you are a more mature person and you're listening to this and you know, your generation maybe has certain viewpoints regarding counseling or therapy. So what? You know, you listen to yourself. It's never too late to talk to someone and navigate your journey and really get to a point where you feel like you are a better, stronger, healthier you.
Mm-hmm. You get an unbiased person that is going to empathetically listen to you, that's going to have positive regard for you. And that can be so healing in and of itself. Some people just need somebody to listen to
Yeah.
them, to witness their life in an unbiased way. And other people that have trauma or that are grieving,
Mm-hmm.
you need that, and you need some extra support so that, like Anna said, that splinter then becomes scar tissue, and scar tissue that's been taken care of, so it's not bothersome, it doesn't get infected or split open every time it rains or something.
Mm-hmm. Completely. Yeah. And I mean, it's really, you know, back to the movie, I enjoyed seeing a woman who was in her 40s, we presume, because her husband's like in his 60s and she's much younger than him, um, going through this, because I feel like sometimes our society applies like an age standard, like, oh yeah, if you're 20 and you're in your 20s, you should totally be in therapy, that's normal. By the time you're in like your mid 30s, you've got other things to worry about, not so much. But the fact that she is reliving this trauma and working through it, and she is in her 40s, and then she's using this to help other people, um you know, it just goes to show, like, any age is a good age to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you have the best items in your toolkit.
It's never too late to get support, because then we see her on her healing journey where she gets to, we're going to get into him, the moon man, she gets to
Mm-hmm.
confront him, and then she's working with survivors of sexual abuse and she's supporting them, so then she does her healing and then she can help others heal. So like Anna said, it's never too late for you to start that journey, because even when you heal, it's the ripple effect,
Mm-hmm.
then others heal too. So the
Yeah.
moon man, what an interesting, creepy character.
Yeah. Well, and I do kind of feel bad in the sense that he has acromegaly, which is a legitimate medical condition. Um, just, you know, I think appearance wise, persons that have this condition may seem monstrous to others, with the exception of the Moon Man. Um, anyone that I've ever encountered with this particular condition has been very dear and sweet and kind and loving. They just look different than us. But really, when we start thinking about the Moon Man, right? He lived with his aunt and uncle. He has this condition. We don't really know how socialized he was, but one would assume not very much. Um, was he always kind of this character that was doing these things, or did society's treatment of him and his appearance contribute to him being this character? Um, we may not know that. It might be a chicken and egg type of question, but um, that just really struck me with his character. And I know he's not even, he's not a protagonist or an antagonist. I feel like he's an accessory through the story.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Gerald is much more the antagonist, than the Moon Man is. But I just, I don't know. There were some Ed Gein feels in there too. I don't know. What do you think, Margaret?
Well, you had shared with me earlier, and I'd love for you to share that here too, about why he wasn't the antagonist, what it was. Because with other people, he had raped
Yeah.
people. And yet with Jess, he comes in and, like you said, more of just this, an accessory.
Yeah. And I think a lot of
Please
it
share.
is power. Statistically, in terms of research, at the end of the day, Margaret and I, we care about you as our listeners. we want to introduce you to all these great films, but we also want to let you know we are educated in our field and we are very passionate about helping people. And we've done a lot of research about these sorts of things and worked with a lot of people. I think Margaret more so than myself when it comes to this specific type of trauma. However, violent perpetrators, particularly when it comes to sexual offenses and physical violence, it is based on power. Having power over another person is what gets them off. It's not the sexual act. It's not the violent act. It is the power and control. There have been dozens, probably hundreds of thousands of studies at this point, and it's power. So the fact that when Jess sees him and she's been hallucinating, she's lost a ton of blood, and she's like, "You're not real, you're just made out of the moon," and she gives him her ring, she's not afraid of him. Like, she's just like, "I gotta get out of here before I bleed to death," and that's it. So there is nothing, and pardon my terminology here, but there's nothing to get him off. So why do you need to kill her?
There isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she, like you said, she sees him, she thinks he's an hallucination. So like you said, there's nothing to get him off. Where with Gerald, when he is like, "Call me daddy," scream, and he has this rape fantasy, she's terrified. And so Gerald's getting more and more excited with the moon man. She's just like, okay. And I think Gerald was like, he's coming to take your soul or something. And at this point, she's delirious. She's like, okay, like, whatever. I don't know what's happening. And I think her wiser self was like, give him something and he'll go away. And so she's like, okay. So like Anna said, she wasn't afraid because at this point she knows she's dying. So it's more of like, the Grim Reaper's here and I know I'm dying. So the Grim Reaper takes me. If he doesn't, well, I'm moving on.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think her going to his arraignment, you know, it really, to me, when she goes in and she's just like, hey, and he turns around and he's like, "You are real," and repeats what she said to him. I think one, that's validation for her character in the sense of, I'm still here. I've made it. Like, I am still here and I have a purpose. And I think for him, it goes to just kind of show maybe his conceptualized reality that he was living in. But I don't know. For me, as bizarre as this sounds, it is a feel-good movie because at the end, Jesse's helping people. And I just, what a beautiful thing to take something so horrific and so difficult that happened to you in your life, do the work, get through it. I'm not saying go get tied to a bed, have your partner die and get eaten by a dog. Don't do that. But find, you know, a counseling group, a therapy session, some sort of outlet that works for you. Do the work. Keep putting the work in. Is it easy? No. Are some of the days going to be extremely hard? Yes, probably for the rest of your life. But you know what? If you're doing the work and you're trying to get yourself in a healthier spot, eventually you're going to inspire other people to do that too. And what is more wonderful and beautiful than being able to help yourself and through that help someone else?
Yes, I agree with you on all but one point. Yes, like, do the work. It's going to be hard. And then you're going to get to a place where when you do the work, you're no longer activated by, you have found power in your story. You have reclaimed your story. Nobody else gets to use your story against you. So often we feel shame. Oh my gosh, my husband handcuffed me to the bed and he had a heart attack, and there's the shame. My dad masturbated while I was on his lap. But then we go, yeah, this happened to me and let me help you. And so it's not as painful when you do the really hard work and you sit with the pain and you go there. And for some people, I will agree with Anna, it is a long journey depending on your trauma story. It might be a lifetime in therapy. For somebody else, it might be, I don't know, because I don't like to put a timeline on it because we're all
Mhm.
different and it's really therapy. We're telling our story. And then from a somatic place, we're metabolizing that. So it no longer is activating our nervous system. So we're no longer, oh my gosh, there's a man that looks like my husband. I'm having a reaction.
Mhm.
Like, okay, cool. Like, you look like my husband,
Yeah,
whatever.
totally. And the other thing to that, as we get more comfortable telling our story or talking about our experiences, other people may not be as comfortable. And their individual reaction is their reaction. It has to do with their perception of their own reality. But I will say, do not be surprised if you share your way of thinking and not everyone is receptive to that. That is okay too. Like, we're all on our own journeys. Don't let that hinder you from sharing. I actually had made a comment a few weeks ago, and I think it shocked a few of my colleagues because I was so matter of fact about it. And I suppose the subject matter was something that is a bit frightful to most people. And I'm trying to be as generic as possible. But I mean, to give like an example of that, this wasn't the particular case, but someone may say, oh, so and so, they had this experience and someone close to them died. For me, I'll be like, oh, that's really unfortunate. I hope they're doing well. I hope that they're getting support, but we need to remember everyone dies, right? So not not everyone in the world thinks that way. And people's jaws may become agape, but it's your comfort and it's how you feel. And if you're comfortable to talk about it, talk about it.
Yes. And find those people that can listen, those people that are not going to not be in a place, or even, right, it's okay if you start to share and then somebody is not in a place
Mhm.
to receive. Be like, okay, I
Yeah.
don't think this is the right conversation for us, or you get to switch the subject. You don't have to
Mhm.
stay in a conversation if you
Yeah.
start one with somebody and they're just not in a place to receive what you have to say. And that's, we're speaking very general
Mhm.
here, because there are some conversations where you might feel like you need to call somebody out if they're being racist or sexist or ableist. Those are
Yeah.
different conversations where you might have to say, well, your comment was not appropriate, or
Mhm.
whatever it is. Or even if, and not to beat yourself up if you can't do that in that situation, because there are some very frightening people that, again, will use their
Yeah.
power to silence
Mhm.
other
And
people, which
once
isn't okay.
again, the power dynamic. I mean, it's it's frightening because it's still out there. How can I empower myself to oppress someone else or hurt someone else? And unfortunately, there is no real formula to identify characters that live by that rule because they come in all shapes and sizes. And that's the other thing, too. I think that our society really provides us an image. I mean, even if you look at Jessie, an innocent girl and her father, an innocent woman and her husband, these are the characters that these things happen to, but that's not the truth in anyone. This can happen to someone who's feminine facing, masculine facing, any race, culture, ethnicity, socioeconomic background, sexual orientation, sexual identity. Um, don't let society tell you you're not a victim if you are not X, Y, or Z. If something happens to you and it is not consensual and it is having long lasting impact on you, you have the right and you deserve to seek counseling, to seek therapy, to seek help, to have someone speak to you about this, to work through it in the best way possible for yourself so that you can lead a better, healthier life.
Mhm. Yes, you don't need to be silence. You get to own what happened to you. And going back, if somebody is racist, sexist, ableist, you can say something like, I don't understand where that's funny, because oftentimes they'll use those comments as a joke. Or you can say, I'm sorry, I don't understand that comment. So instead of saying that was racist, that was sexist, you can say, I don't understand your comment. Because then it puts it back on them. And oftentimes most people have enough self-awareness that when we go, I don't understand that. Then when they have to explain it, they will realize that they are out of line. Yeah. And they won't say anything. I'm not talking about the extremists, but for you to take back some of that power, some of that, your voice, right? I think most of us have been at the workplace and like, blondes are dumb or whatever it is. And you say, I'm sorry, I don't get that. Or why is that funny? Because again, they're going to realize, and that gives you some power. That gives you some say back.
Completely. I totally agree. Now I have to ask, Margaret, who do you most identify with in this movie and why?
Yeah, we've got so many characters to pick from in this movie. Just kidding. I'm going to have to go with Jess. I think being a woman, having trauma, doing my own work, being in the helping profession that I'm in, I'm going to go with Jess. What about you?
This is going to sound really funny, and it's an inanimate object, the glass of water.
Ooh.
The reason is because the glass is half full, right? It is something positive in the film. It's something that can help Jess, something that is there to help. You are there to help. But she needs to ensure that it's within reach. So I think, for me, it's you can be willing and ready and able to help, but until the other party is comfortable with reaching out or kind of devising a plan of action, there's nothing you can do. And I think as professionals that want to support people and help them navigate their journeys, that is something that is a test to us, or at least to me, and can be very difficult because not everyone is ready to ask for help. Not everyone is ready to do the work, and that is okay too. And I've heard people kind of in this field, in mental health in general, kind of make remarks like, oh, well, you can't save them all, and those sorts of things. And it becomes very daunting to hear that. I don't care for that mentality. It's more of just, everyone's in their own life journey, trying to figure it out. Not everyone's ready to take a step where they can do the work, and that's okay. So, hey, even if you're listening and you don't feel like you're ready to expand your toolkit or seek support and services, they're still going to be there when you are ready. And that's the most important thing that you need to know.
Ooh, I like that. The glass, and also, right, that you can't save them all. That makes me think I can't save them all, but then I know that there's Annas out there. There's other people out there. So if whoever misses river of fish, I'm not going to catch all the fish, but there's other people catching fish to help. So I know that I might not be able to save everybody, but there are other people out there that are working to do the work so that when you are ready, their net's going to be open and you can swim in and start working on your healing.
Exactly. And, helping other people, it's not just, going to a professional. We don't even know how impactful, like a kind word or a gentle smile or holding a door for someone can be. Somebody could be walking into a building behind you and having the worst morning ever, Like, nobody cares about me. Nobody will do anything nice for me. And there you hold the door for them. And right there, someone has done something nice. What a difference that's made.
Yes. Kindness goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. And with that, please be kind to yourself. If you're kind to yourself first, it makes it so much easier to be kind to others.
Mm-hmm.
You deserve to be nice to yourself. If someone wasn't nice to you, that was their action. That doesn't mean you can't be nice to yourself.
Mm-hmm. You deserve your love.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with that, Margaret. And, hopefully, anyone who's listening, I know we talk a lot about supports and services and counseling and treating yourself well. On some level, I guess we are hippie ladies, but we want the best for you guys out there. We really do. And, just remember that, hey, if you ever feel down and out, you've got Margaret and Anna, and we want the best for you. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So go have a beautiful day, listeners.
Exactly. Yes. And I'm kind of surprised neither of us said we related to the dog, but I'm happily surprised. Because I was like,
I was trying to think of how I could twist it to the dog.
Yeah. I mean, I had a big lunch, so I'm not hungry. I think if I wouldn't have eaten before we were recording today, maybe I would have said the dog is hungry. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I think we're gonna keep going down the Stephen King path a little bit. So stay tuned to see what else we have to talk about. And certainly, if you have any authors or books that we have not discussed yet, please let us know down in the comments. We're open to all sorts of new stuff. Also, if there's anything that struck you in this episode, let us know if you'd like us to expand on any sort of topic, because we are here for you. We are here to help you guys as our listeners. So any feedback you have is greatly appreciated. And thank you again so much for listening. We wish you a wonderful, witchy day, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.